Oh well, I want to bring out some of the features of Keynote 6 in its latest version for beginners and perhaps some intermediate people to try and get away from the static text-based, even now stock photo-based slides that we're starting to see more and more commonly. Also want to show you some animations that one can use using some of the features to draw lines to show the passage of time and change. Let me take you through the Keynote slides that I set up and why. So during this week just gone by, I was invited by a group of psychologists in private practice to talk to them about what IT can bring to their practices. And one of the things I like to talk about is perhaps some of the new equipment that will help a psychologist go paperless. Not an easy thing to do, and it's a struggle for the professions because of the regulations around note keeping and record keeping and so forth. Yet the need to be portable where one can, have devices that can access one's notes wherever and however one might, and get away from keeping files in filing cabinets where it's not always easy to access. So the idea was to go paperless. So let me take you through some of the slides that I showed and then take you through some ideas. I'm going now to Keynote, and let's start off. This is how I use one of the latest themes from that Keynote in its latest version supplies. And you can see it's very simple, very plain, using one of the default theme templates. And it simply says, going paperless. And I started my talk by saying, usually if you're instructed to give a talk, you're supposed to grab people's attention within the first couple of minutes and really sell your points. And I said, I'm not going to do that today, which of course grabs their attention. And instead I need to issue a couple of warnings about what's going to happen over this next hour. It was an hour-long après dinner talk. So the next slide that pops up is this, a warning side that flashes as I'm talking, and I'll take you through the builds that I did this in a moment. And I say, warning, it may be the case that after this talk, if what I happen to show you excites you, there's going to be a price to pay. You're going to actually have to spend some money. So we have a slide here, a video of a dollar symbol, and I say not just is it going to cost you money, but it may well cost you time. And instead of using your standard stock photo clock, I went for what looks like a handwritten, hand-drawn clock, still recognizable as an icon. This comes from one of the stock photo collections that I get from time to time, and it's a hand-drawn thing. And it's nice to have this sort of differences between occasionally hand-drawn but instantly recognizable and true-to-life photos. And so I say, well, that's kind of what's going to cost you. It may cost you money and it may cost you time. And out it goes. So I said, this is what it can sometimes look like. We can sometimes grab onto a product at the end of tonight's night and you'll say, my God, that's awesome. But you know what? It doesn't really do what you said it was going to do. And then over we go, oh, I get it. Now I see the best way to use it is. And so the most important thing to point out in this particular slide is this drawing of this line using Apple's new or Keynote's new line draw build. But it's a curved line. And the question is, how do you get that? Okay, and let me finish off the slide stack, by the way, because I went back to this and said it's actually more accurate for us to say going paperless than being paperless, because that's a state that we might not ever get to. Better to go going paperless. So let's go into the slide stack and I'll show you what I actually did. So here's the first slide, and it's using going paperless. And then the next slide is warning. Okay. For those of you who want to know what this is, let me show you the font comes with a particular theme that we're working with, and it's called DIN Condensed. Let me show you, by the way, the theme that we're working with. If I go up to New, it's this one called Modern Type. This one here is the one that we're using. And the built-in theme, or the built-in fonts, in this case, is warning. And in order to get it to blink, okay, watch how this works. Hit the preview and it blinks. and it happened immediately after the transition. You can see here, start, after transition, no delay. So as soon as I hit click and we go from the previous slide to this one, the warning will start to flash. It's to last 3 seconds, and it's to blink 8 times in those 3 seconds. The fade, if I click that, simply means it never goes off the screen. It just fades slightly, whereas if I click this off, it actually does go momentarily off the screen. So that's what that's about. And you can fiddle around with how many blinks you want and how long it's to last for. Okay. Next slide is the one that contains all these elements. So all that effect that you saw was using, how many elements have we got here? We've got the warning slide that still stays there. And if you look onto the build order, you can see it's a fairly complicated. There's 12 builds off and on this particular slide. So here's the warning one, and then it disappears. We have a variety of things. So when I click on warning, you'll notice that there are 3 aspects to it, which is kind of interesting. And the reason that there's 3 of them is that there's a duplicate here. Okay, there's a duplicate, and that's because if I play this particular slide again, you'll notice that this warning gets out of the way. So let me just play this part again, and you may have seen a slight judder there, and that's because the warning that flashes gets out the way, and this one gets in the way right over the top, and then it moves out the way, so we have this splitting effect of the dollar coming from outside the warning. Let me show you two again. So it appears from behind the warning. Can you see? Watch again. It comes from underneath it. Okay? Which is the effect that I wanted. So that's why I needed to have these 2 elements. So this one behind disappears. The one in front appears. So that's essentially invisible to the audience unless they're really looking hard. So that disappears. Okay. Then it moves upwards, which is what this line represents. The dollar symbol appears behind it as it's moving up, hopefully, so you don't see, you actually see it slightly, but then it moves at the same time as the warning goes up. See? After build 4, and then the clock comes in on a skid, on a click, the clock goes out on a skid, and then I can start to talk about the shape, which is this line drawing. The awesome comes in 4.5 seconds after this line drawing starts. The entire line drawing, if you have a look, lasts for 17.5 seconds. This whole line drawing is 17.5 seconds, and you have to, the way I construct it, you have to remember how long that's going to go for. So the awesome comes in roughly 4.5 seconds as it goes up the incline. The line doesn't stop as it comes down. But it doesn't do, comes in after build 10, okay, after build 10 by about 2 seconds. And then the now I see it comes in after build 11 at 3:25. So this is build 11. Build 10 is this one. So after this one moves out, is the timing here. So let's watch this whole slide again. So the flashing warning one has gone off. The warning, which is a screenshot of that, has replaced it. The audience doesn't notice it. It rolls up and the dollar symbol comes down. The dollar symbol, in fact, is a movie, and it goes off on its own. Again, a stock photo movie. That leaves some space, some white space underneath it, in which case now the other thing that's going to cost you is time. That's the skid. And it then disappears. Whoosh, off it goes. And then comes the drawing of the line, as you can see. And I had to do this, I had to time this so I knew to say it's awesome. Notice the warning went off on its own as well. I timed that, but it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. And then, but eventually, as it bumps along here, now I see the best way to use it is boom. Okay, so I hope you get the idea of what we're trying to do here. Okay, this idea and the words came from a website. Here's the original drawing, which I'll put here, which I grabbed a hold of. I'm going to take you to the website eventually. But what I basically did is I Googled learning curve, because I want to talk about people having a learning curve to master new technologies. And this one popped up, and I put in funny learning curve. So let me take you to the website where I grabbed this from. It's here. Pure Danger Tech, Alex Millet's from like 2008 or 9, I think it is. And here's the actual graph that I grabbed a hold of, and you can actually grab it here. I simply dragged it across from the browser over to here, as you can see. But I only grabbed it as a model. I didn't want to actually grab the model. I want to create it for myself. Okay. Now, the question becomes how to actually do this line. Let me for a moment get rid of that one. How do you actually draw this line is the question. And then we know how to animate it once it's drawn. We're going to use the line draw, the new line draw animation feature. You don't want to use the wipe. The wipe could almost do it, but it's not quite there. So I'm just going to duplicate this selection for a moment and get rid of a lot of the stuff we don't need, just so that you can see how the whole process works. So we've got rid of all this stuff now. And let's just watch this up close now. Click. Up it goes. Remember, this whole line draw is going to be 17.5 seconds. So here's a chance for me to say to you, but it's awesome. But then you say to me, it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. And then up it goes. You're on your learning curve. Bubbles along. Now I see the best way to use this. Boom. And it keeps on going up, hopefully. So there you go. The question becomes, how do we do this? All right. So the best way for me to show you this is just to duplicate what we've got so we can have a bit of a play. Okay. I'm going to just gently move the words away so we've got a nice clear space. There we go. And if I click just on the line, you can see that there's this blue outline around it, and the blue outline means that you can grab the whole thing and move it round, which is what you might want to do. But what about if you want to change one of the inflection points? Maybe I don't want these going up and down. So if you just grab a hold, just put your mouse pointer over the arrow itself and go click, click, the blue line disappears. You've got an arrow here, and you've got your opportunity to do an inflection. The mouse pointer changes to a little hand, and you've got the dots which form the inflection points. Okay? We'll just go back to exactly as it was before. There we go. So, how do we get this created? Well, let's just move this aside for one moment. We'll just put it out here for a moment. We know what we're going to be doing. This is the general shape that I wanted to do. All right? So just got to keep that in mind. So we have starting point, inflection point, and over this side another couple of little points. We'll get to that. That's not so important. So the way to do that is to do the shape, and you see where it says draw with pen? So we're not going to worry too much about the color and whatever else here. We're just going to do draw with pen. And because it's a black background I've chosen, you want to get maybe one of the colors that's nice and bright, such as the yellow. You get an instruction down here. We're not going to worry too much about that. And you're just going to do, if you just grab it, all you do is get a line like so. If you just pull across, that's not much use. So we're going to use this to do a bunch of points. So dot and dot and dot and dot. That's the top inflection point. And this is all I'm doing is just clicking. Okay? All I'm doing is clicking. There we go. And just do a double click on the final one. And now you've got this. Okay? Of course, it's a long way away from the smoothness of this, but that's okay. So one more time, and of course you've got this blue outline around it, so you can move the whole thing around to put it exactly where you want it to. But we want to smooth out these bumps. So do a double click, and now you've got these lovely little hooks there. If you just pull on it, it highlights it, and it goes back to the original line drawing that I had chosen. But if you grab a hold of it, it actually goes back just to the whole thing goes back to a thick line, but you still don't get rid of the curves. Can you see? So you can sort of approximate, and if you had plenty of time on your hands, you could sort of do little tiny clicks in between and smooth it out that way. But so the question becomes, how are we going to smooth this out? Well, having everything highlighted, there is a series of opportunities up here. See where it says shapes and lines, make editable, reset text, which are things you can do. But notice it's got make sharp point, make smooth point, make Bezier point. We're going to choose make smooth point. Okay, and notice that the area that I was playing with smooths out. But I actually want everything here to smooth out. So what I'm going to do is grab a hold of the bottom one, highlight that, and then do select all. Boom. And just the points on here, on this line, not the other stuff. I've now selected all the points. So now I can go back to shapes and lines, make smooth, and then I've got my smooth points. Can you see? And so that's when I can actually take it now that it's smooth, double click on here. So now that it's smooth, you can, if you wish, we want to unselect it, by the way, deselect all. And so now you can take a bit at a time and start to play with it. Okay. And so that's how you do it. Nice and smooth. And you can always add new inflection points just by putting your mouse in there. See how little white dot opens up, and just move it around. In terms of the line itself, the line I chose it to be was something like, you can change the line style to that, or to that, and thicken it up a little bit. There we go. This is kind of interesting, or that. So you've got a variety of styles. You can have it as dots, you can have it as dashes, lots of little dashes, even smaller dashes, and then of course just a straight line. And you can change the thickness, of course. You can add some shadows to it. It won't come up on here because unless I chose a, say, a white color, then it might come up. You can see how you can now blur it. There we go. And so that's how you do it. Okay. Here's my original one that I chose to use. I can get rid of that now. This one, you then, in animation, have a build. There's a variety of builds you can use. There's not much in terms of action. So you're going to do a build in, and you're going to choose the lens or the line draw feature, which is this one. And it's 2 seconds by default, and so you can stretch this out. Have another look. And off you go. The ease part is, does it leave slowly and then accelerate, or does it leave fast and then decelerate? So you need to have a bit of a play. Here's the ease in, so you can tell the difference. And then it starts to pick up speed. Yeah? Boom. And accelerates. The ease out, of course, is the reverse effect. Starts off fast, and then it slows down. Ease both, slow it up, and then slow down. Or of course you can just have neither. With regard to the endpoints, if I unclick endpoints, you're not going to see much at all there in terms of difference. Unless you have happened under format as endpoints to have a boom and a boom, which you might choose to do. So if we do preview, just watch what happens with the include endpoints part. Boom, that could be useful. And if I do this, notice what happens. The endpoint goes along with it. Okay. Or I could choose it not to be. Watch again. The endpoint is there at the start. Up we go. And then the endpoint can be there. Bong. And that could be, you could see a really useful thing, because when that thing goes bong, then you could then have your words coming across. I am going to do a part 2 of this. And part 2 would be, what happens if I don't want to do this thing in one go? I just want to go up to here, pause, in comes awesome. I talk about that. And then can say, but what happens after that? And then just draw this part that comes down and go, oh, and it bottoms out, and then it stops at this point, and then continues on with the words here, but it doesn't do what I want it to do. These then stay in place, and then on a click, up it goes, and it moves along. But if I can move these words in, but now I see the way. So is it possible to do it rather than just doing one motion and then having to time myself as to when the words come in? Can I actually make it stop at each of those inflection points? And then on a click, because maybe we're going to have a discussion, what would make it awesome? Or have you ever felt disappointment and go around the audience and ask them, you don't want this thing cascading along and revealing what the next build is. So is it possible to do it up and down and click, click, click as it moves along? And the answer is yes. And that's what I'm going to do in the next installation. That will go up in the next day or two. Bye for now.